Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Prattville, Alabama, February 2021. 36-year-old Britta Lashley hadn't been seen nor heard from since February 21st of 2021. Her mother reported her missing in June of this year, fearing that something bad had happened to her daughter. The police claimed that they would look for her. Now, the news stories at the time named a man, James Michael Barrett, as someone who she was known to have hung around. The police this year eventually arrested two men, James Michael Barrett being the first, along with a friend of his, Edward Norman. Authorities say that Norman rented a U-Haul and helped Barrett to move Lashley's body from the Comfort Stay Motel in Montgomery to a storage unit in Prattville that Barrett was renting. Lashley's corpse had been in that storage unit for so long that it had become mummified. Now, the prosecution's deposition alleges that Britta Lashley's mother spoke with James Barrett a few weeks before she filed the missing persons report. Barrett allegedly told the mother that he would have Lashley contact her. This was in June of this year, mind you. But of course, Barrett did not tell Britta's mother that her daughter was already long since dead, or that he was the one who moved her dead body from where she had died and put it into a storage unit to rot. Now, the DA says that there is no evidence of homicide at this time, and that Britta Lashley's cause of death is not yet known. So, let me get this straight. The last person to see Britta Lashley alive removed her body from a motel where she had apparently died. This guy doesn't contact the police or the authorities or let them know that he had a dead woman on his hands. He doesn't seek any sort of medical attention for her. Instead, he calls up a buddy of his and they get themselves a U-Haul truck so they can secretly conceal her corpse and then hide it in a storage unit. And when the mother of this woman who he knows is already dead calls him up, he doesn't even have the decency to tell her that her daughter is dead and that he knows where her corpse is at. Now, knowing all that, if this guy knew that this woman was dead, but he didn't tell anyone, not even her own mother, common sense would indicate maybe that's because he knows more about her death than he's letting on. And that's a pretty low bar, by the way, because he's not saying anything at all about her death. The authorities are already concluding that there's no evidence of homicide, even though they also admit they don't know what her cause of death was. You know those hayseed authorities down in Alabama who don't know anything about this incident? They sure seem eager to rule out the most obvious possibility. Now, these two individuals have only been charged with abuse of a corpse, and that's pretty much it. That's significant to me because, as I've chronicled for you in other crime reports that YouTube took down a while back, for some offenders, those with genetic immunity from the law, whenever they're believed to have killed someone, all of a sudden these DAs start bringing out all kinds of weird charges, anything short of actually charging them with the homicide. And abuse of a corpse is a typical one. Certain people who have been found to have killed someone and buried their bodies somewhere or stuffed them in a container or otherwise hidden them, rather than immediately get hit with murder charges, these DAs instead will go for the abuse of a corpse charge. This is actually far more common than you might think. Now, the trolls, idiots, and halfwits will try to say, but the prosecutors probably can't prove that they killed her, so they have to go with what they think that they can prove. Yep, that's the ticket. That's the story we gonna hide behind. That's a lie, of course. DAs routinely charge black people for crimes when there's no proof that the black person had anything to do with it. As soon as they establish a cause of death, they simply blame the nearest black person for it, whatever that cause of death may be. The fact that these two individuals had this woman's corpse in their possession is enough to charge them with the person's death, and it would be if these two suspects were black. Now, as you can see, this Barrett character seems to have what appears to be a mugshot, so this most likely isn't his first run-in with the law. Though the white media is certainly keeping mum on that one if this guy's got himself a prior record. And no blaming the victim for her own death either. Gee, how different the white media coverage is when they don't have a black person to demonize. And that brings us to our second crime report. August 1st, 2022, Memphis, Tennessee. At around 3:35 p.m., a man and a woman who were driving a Chevy Cruze approached Memphis police and told them that they were being chased and threatened by a man in a Chevy Silverado. The driver of the Silverado intentionally rammed into the couple's smaller car, and he told them that he would blow their brains out. Memphis police went after the truck and attempted a traffic stop, but this criminal sped off. They soon found the truck abandoned. The driver at this point was now on foot fleeing. He was caught by the police and arrested. He's since been identified as 53-year-old Stacy Hardwick. There was a passenger in the Silverado at the time of the chase, and this passenger said that they had tried to get Hardwick to stop, but Hardwick threatened them if they didn't shut up. The police found that the truck was stolen, the steering column was damaged, and the police also found cutting tools as well as drugs in the truck. And you won't be surprised to find that this Hardwick character is a hardened criminal, a career convict with a record long as your arm. This guy has 15 warrants. You heard that right. 15. He has warrants in Mississippi for theft of catalytic converters, multiple warrants in Shelby County for burglary to a motor vehicle, theft of property, evading in an automobile, convicted felon in possession of a handgun, petition to revoke a suspended license, possession of methamphetamine with the intent to manufacture, deliver, sell, intent to evade arrest, auto risk of death, aggravated assault, possession of burglary tools, evading arrest, driving while license suspended, canceled, or revoked, violation of financial responsibility, kidnapping, and reckless driving. So basically, this guy is working his way through the entire penal code. He seems to be starting with aggravated assault, and I guess he's working his way to zoophilia. Now, I want to know, where's the outrage? Where's the politicians and police and white media asking how this guy is still on the streets with all these warrants? Where's the talk about judges being too soft on crime and how this is a failure of the system? We need more laws. His face and his name should be everywhere long before now, but it wasn't. Now, it says a lot that this guy has so many warrants, so many run-ins with the law, and yet he's still on the streets. But it says even more that this isn't a bigger story, but we can all guess why that is. While this is wild and bizarre to you and me, the reality is that for certain people this isn't weird at all. To ignore his record, to memory hole it, pretend it doesn't exist, it's quite normal. Typically what happens is they just let these guys stay on the loose, stealing car parts and attacking people with stolen vehicles until they finally murder someone, and then the DAs will offer them some sweetheart plea deal where they get to plead to abuse of a corpse or something, but that's the usual pattern. That's how these cases are normally handled by the authorities and the white media, who doesn't ask any questions, and when these guys' mile-long criminal records come to light, doesn't have any outrage of the usual questions that they have for other people. What's unusual in this case is that there's now a black media keeping tabs on these kind of stories, so that you know about them. Because the white media is very good for telling you about Pookie and Ray Ray robbing the local 7-Eleven, and even when they don't have a story about some local black suspects, they'll either repeat a previous story from a couple of days ago, or they'll tell you about some black suspects in the next county, and if there's not one in the next county, then they'll report on one over in the next state. Whatever lengths the white media has to go to keep up the steady daily drumbeat of anti-black propaganda. Well, we don't do propaganda here. We do the black truth. The double standards and double dealing are to be expected. We can be disgusted by this, but none of us can be surprised. There's clearly two sets of rules. One for those with genetic immunity from law, and the other for black people. Right now, we don't have enough resources to make the white media and their enablers pay a serious price for this duplicity. But we're getting there. And we won't be using our power merely to call out this two-faced fakery. We're going to be using our power to stomp it out. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show to you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Starlet Thompson, Moshe Ben Abraham, Alvin McCoy, Alexandria Sturgeon, and Fidel Phillips. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.